Okay, TikTok users have found something, and it creates a conflict. A direct, documented, time-stamped conflict between what the report says happened and what the report also says was happening at the exact same time. There is a captain deployed to a barrier island, managing a drone operation with 3 failed launches, a software error, swollen batteries from the July heat. His first successful flight does not happen until 12:40 in the afternoon. But at 11:55 that same morning, his name is on a directive to find a specific girl with specific language attached to her name, language that is measurably different from every other name in that same document. Subpoenas have gone out to 5 tech companies. Everyone connected to this case has been told, do not delete anything. Because litigation is reasonably anticipated. That phrase, reasonably anticipated, that is not grief talking. That is lawyers filing paperwork. That is people preparing for a courtroom. Oh, stay with me, because we are going all the way through this. Now here is where the content creators paused. And honestly, where you should pause too.
And yes, I have already tried making a video about this, so let's try it again. All right, so according to one of the original MDMR reports, Captain William Freeman called the Master Sergeant and told them to locate and interview a female subject. And that's how we get to this girl, Lainey. Now, this has always bothered me because I'm like, why is Lainey's name in this report? Why was she brought up at all? Especially since, according to Lainey, she hadn't seen Nolan in over a year and was on a completely different island. So it never made sense to me. And then it effing hit me. So according to this report, on July 5th at 9 a.m., assistance was requested from Captain Freeman as part of the drone search. Freeman was transported to Horn Island, and at approximately 10 a.m. he tried 3 failed launches. It ended up being a software error, and he was unable to fix it in the field. So then at 10:30, Freeman requests that Smith come out and assist with drone duty. Freeman and another officer went and picked up Smith and transported him to Horn Island. But by 12:40, the first drone finally takes flight. Now, wait a minute. If Freeman was out on Horn Island trying to do this drone launch, had to call in assistance, go and get that person, bring them back to Horn Island, then when the F did he get this information about Lainey? Oh, wait, I have an idea.
Who was looking for Nola? Who was on the boat? Was it multiple boats? Multiple boats. Okay, explain that. Who was out of this group? Who was on what boat? Or who was on a boat or not? Going out looking for Nola.
So, me, Wyatt, and Trayston got in the boat. We got in the Palm Beach that morning, the morning after, and to the islands, and we were met by DMR. There was 7 DMR boats already out there, DMR and park rangers. We talked to them. We gave them all of our information. They personally asked if any of us were on the boat with him that day. We told them yes. They just said, all right, well, I mean, we got the area scoped out. And then after that, we just went up to the beach. I think we met up with y'all. Yeah.
Okay, so by Morgan's own words, he, Trayston, and Wyatt were on the Palm Beach out at Horn Island talking to MDMR. Oh, and when was that? When did they do that?
From 9:45 to 11:50, 12 o'clock era, about lunchtime. While we were on the water, we talked to a rescue guy.
Oh, you were out there until 11:50, you say? You mean 5 minutes before this phone call happened? Does that sound like a coincidence to you? Now, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to conclude that they were the ones who gave this information to Captain Bill Freeman. Again, why would they give Lainey's name if she wasn't there in that group that day? Especially when he was supposedly last seen with Katie, whose name, again, is conveniently absent from any report that we've seen. Now, this is about to get deep, y'all, because I reread the line again, now knowing that the boys were the ones who probably gave this information and not just some random good citizen. Specific wording says, Captain Freeman said to locate and interview a female subject that was possibly involved with the missing person on Horn Island. Possibly involved? How did I miss that? How did we all miss that? Because there's 2 other boys mentioned in this that they don't make contact with, and it just says possible names associated with Wells. That is very different and intentional language. Now, as I've told y'all, I've spent weeks learning the dynamics of all these different friend groups and who they're friends with online, etc. Now, this is Lainey. Now, most people have clocked this picture where Lainey is with a girl who is wearing the same swimsuit last 4th of July as the one that is on the boat with Katie. I'm going to try and do this in the easiest way possible. I have narrowed down the BFF group with Lainey and these girls. All of these girls have called each other their best friends and taken pictures with each other at some point or another. Now, none of these girls are friends with any of the Wyatt Warren friend group. All of them are friends with Trayston and Trayston's sister. Trayston's sister has best friend picture relationships with all of these girls. It's very clear that this is a core group of friends. There's group pictures with them, they've lived together, etc. Now, Kendall is the one in the blue and red bikini in this picture. But I found another picture of Bailey and Maggie here from last 4th of July wearing the exact same red and blue swimsuit that Kendall was wearing. So it's pretty safe to say that these girls coordinated all wearing the same bathing suit. Also found this picture of Lainey from 2 4th of Julys ago wearing this bathing suit. Does it look familiar to anybody? That's right, that is clearly the same bathing suit from the boat with Katie, with a face that's conveniently been blurred. Now, do we think it's a coincidence that 2 swimsuits associated with this friend group all ended up on the same boat as Katie? I'm gonna say the chances are slim. Now, Kendall seems to have a longtime boyfriend. And guess what his name is? Jacob Brooks, which is the second name that comes up on this report. And guess who seems to be Lainey's longtime boyfriend? Drew Johnson, the other name on this report. Now, Drew, unlike all of these people over here, Drew is friends with the Warren Wyatt friend group. Also the only one out of this entire group that is Facebook friends with Nolan. If this was the boys telling this information to the captain, why were they saying that their buddy's girlfriend was possibly involved with Nolan? And why would Trayston be snitching on his sister's friends like this? Now wait, one of Katie's BFFs, Nevaeh, is friends with a Caden McGrath. Caden is friends with 0 people from either group except for Nevaeh, as far as I can tell. Caden is somehow related to a Joe, who is frequently advertising on his page for the Biloxi Bay RV Resort. The one that I was saying that according to the GPS coordinates looks like they may have dropped somebody off at. So in my opinion, Joe is clearly somehow related to the Marty McGrath, who was the one who apparently took all these people on this boat, including Katie, when this friend group was supposedly left on this island. And I feel like that language is really important and overlooked because left makes it sound like your ride left without you. Now, according to Joe's LinkedIn, he is IT for the Ocean Marine Group, which is owned by Jerry Adkerson. Aiden is also the only person I can find who is friends with Captain Chris Seth Ward, the son of Chris Ward, who was called by Jerry to cancel the sea tow allegedly on his private line before the sea tow call was even finished. I also found a very weak connection through social media between Lainey and a girl who is in the same sorority as the girl who threw the party, Ava, allegedly threw the party. So what if Trayston's slick comment wasn't about Katie at all? Because I don't know about you guys, but we have seen absolutely 0 proof that Katie was actually out there with them. They have kept the story hyper-focused on Katie, and no other girls' names have really gotten out. What if Katie has been the red herring this whole time? I don't know. I'm still trying to piece through. I'm still trying to figure it out because there's clearly a chunk that is missing out of this story.
In the early afternoon of that same day, Department of Marine Resources officials launched 2 drone flights to survey the western side of Horn Island. The excessive heat caused the drone's batteries to swell, cutting the flights short. That is the officially documented account of what Freeman's operation looked like that morning. 3 failed launches, a software error, a first successful flight that did not happen until 12:40 p.m., swollen batteries, shortened flights. This was not a calm morning at a desk. Think about what that means. Freeman is physically present on a barrier island. He is troubleshooting drone software. He is communicating upward and sideways for additional assistance. He is managing a search operation in extreme July heat. And somewhere inside all of that, at 11:55 a.m., he is also generating a specific name. A female name, with specific language attached to it, not possible name associated with Wells. That is the language used for the 2 male names in the same report. The language used for the female, the one the TikTok creators are calling Lainey, was possibly involved with the missing person. Notice this, that is not the same language. And in a legal document, language is not accidental. Possibly involved with the missing person is a meaningfully different phrase than possible name associated with Wells. One is a proximity description. The other is a participation description. One puts someone near Nolan. The other puts someone in the story of what happened to Nolan. These creators are not imagining that distinction. It is there, in black and white, in the official report. So where did Freeman get that name? And why did whoever gave it to him use language that pointed inward, not just nearby? That is the thread this community of TikTok investigators pulled, and it leads directly to a boat called the Palm Beach. Here is what the documents show about the morning of July 5th. Several of the friends who traveled with Wells told deputies that, quote, when they left, he was in the company of an unknown female and that he chose to remain on the island, according to a Department of Marine Resources Marine Patrol police report. That is the official account. That is what the report says. And to be fair, that is also what some of the friends have maintained. But here is where the TikTok analysis zeroes in. According to the creators presenting this timeline, and again, this is drawn from what they describe as the official transcript, Morgan, Tristan, and Wyatt, 3 members of the group that had been on Horn Island with Nolan, were on a vessel called the Palm Beach. And according to the timeline argument being made, that boat was at Horn Island from approximately 9:45 in the morning to 11:50 in the morning on July 5th. Do the math. If the Palm Beach was departing the area around 11:50 and Freeman's sergeant was dispatched at 11:55 to find and interview Lainey, the gap between those two moments is 5 minutes. 5 minutes. The TikTok creators are not saying that is proof of anything. They are saying that is timing, and timing in an active investigation is not nothing. The argument being made is this. The friends on the Palm Beach were likely the source who gave Freeman's team the name Lainey. That they were the ones who introduced her, with the specific language that she was possibly involved. And that the 5-minute window between their departure and Freeman's directive is not coincidence, it is sequence. Now, whether that sequence means what the creators believe it means, that is genuinely unknown. But the timeline conflict itself is documented, the language discrepancy is documented, and the question of how Freeman, while managing a failed drone operation on a remote island, received that specific name with that specific framing, that question has not been answered publicly. Key information, like when Wells was definitively last seen, remains unclear. As the United Cajun Navy's Vice President Brian Trasher put it, that's been the gaping hole since the very beginning, is that nobody seems to have seen or heard from Nolan from sometime in the late afternoon, depending on which account you give credibility, either 4:30 or 6 o'clock on July 4th. That gap between the last confirmed sighting and the moment his friends departed is where the official story gets contested, and it is where this case's central tension lives. We'll be right back on the other side of that tension. But first, let's talk about the phone call that may have told investigators more than any drone ever did. On July 4th, the same day Nolan Wells went missing, a distress call was made from a boat. It was placed to a private marine towing company. And what was said on that call has become one of the most examined pieces of audio in this entire case. NBC News obtained audio showing a call to Seatow, a towing company, around 4 p.m., requesting assistance with a boat that was having trouble. Now, here is what makes this call important. It is not just that the boat was in trouble, it is what one of the callers said, and specifically, how they characterized Nolan's absence from the vessel. According to reporting on the content of that call, one person stated, and I'm going to read this carefully, "It's not like we didn't ask Nolan or we just left Nolan. Nolan decided to stay on the island with the girl that he was with." Read that sentence the way a prosecutor reads it. The person on the call did not say Nolan wanted to stay. They said, "It's not like we just left Nolan." That is a defensive construction. That is someone preemptively explaining a decision. On a call to a towing company, on the same afternoon that Nolan Wells disappeared, the caller also stated that the boat had like 7 passengers, and when asked about the well-being of the passengers by the dispatcher, said, yeah, everybody is on board. Everybody is on board. Said on a call where at least one person, by the same caller's own account, was not on board. Whether that contradiction was intentional, careless, or the result of a chaotic moment on a distressed vessel, that is a question for investigators and eventually a grand jury to weigh. But the contradiction is in the audio. It has been reported, it exists. CETO stated they did not tow the boat after the caller informed them the issue had been resolved, but the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources states the boat was towed 2.75 miles before resuming normal operations. Notice this. That is another discrepancy, not between a theory and an official account, between two official accounts. CETO says they did not tow the vessel. MDMR says the vessel was towed 2.75 miles. Those two statements cannot both be true, and as of now, neither side has publicly resolved that conflict. The family's attorneys have heard this audio. They have acted on it. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department continues to lead the investigation with assistance from the FBI. Federal agents are also investigating reported threats made against the Wansley family, law enforcement officers, and others connected to the case. Now, let's talk about the phone, because this is where the evidentiary picture gets more complicated and more troubling. According to investigators, the group returned to shore without Nolan, but they brought back his cell phone. His phone came home. He did not. Another major element of the case concerns the autopsy results. The official state autopsy results are under seal until a grand jury investigation is completed, and a private autopsy arranged by the family came back inconclusive. But there is a separate issue with that phone, one that Nolan's mother has raised directly. She said it was odd that her son's phone had no Snapchat history the day he disappeared, and that there were discrepancies in the location data. Think about what that means. You are 18 years old. It is the 4th of July. You are on an island with your friends. And your phone, which went back to the mainland without you, contains no Snapchat activity from the entire day you vanished. The family has demanded data from Meta, TikTok, Snap, WhatsApp, and Life360. But how much can be retrieved also depends on when Wells's phone was last synced to the cloud. So if Nolan's phone continued to have a cellular signal or connected to somebody's Wi-Fi and that data did sync up to the cloud, we start running into a data destruction period, one legal analyst explained. That is the window that matters. That is what the family's legal team is racing against. Because if that data synced, it may still exist. If it did not, it may be gone. His mother, Christine Wells Wansley, demanded comprehensive digital records from 5 major tech platforms, including all subscriber information, communication history, direct messages, photos, videos, and GPS location data linked to Wells's phone number and email. Under the terms of the subpoenas, the tech firms have 21 days to preserve and produce the requested electronic storage information. That 21-day clock is either ticking or has already run. What comes back from those platforms, if anything, could reshape the entire evidentiary picture in this case, or confirm that what was on Nolan's phone is simply gone. The TikTok creators also reference a Triton boat spotted behind a security fence. And here I want to be precise about how the content handles that detail, because the video creator carefully notes that finding any Triton boat does not automatically connect it to Nolan's case without confirmed registration and hull ID details. That is the right call. Mentioning a boat without confirmed identification is not evidence, it is a lead. And treating leads like conclusions is how cases get muddied. What we can say, based on documented reporting, is that GPS data from boats related to the case has been collected. Records included reports from July 4th, July 5th, and July 8th, mostly focusing on initial MDMR involvement, drone usage, transfer of the case from MDMR to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, the call to CETO, and the collection of GPS data from boats related to the case. That GPS data exists. It has been collected. Whether it has been fully analyzed and what it shows has not been made public. That is where we are going next, into the autopsy, into the grand jury, into what the family's independent findings actually say. and into what the FBI's involvement actually means and does not mean. Because here is the thing about this case that the TikTok creators have understood, and that the mainstream coverage has been slower to say plainly. While Jackson County District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath has indicated results of the investigation will go to a grand jury, it is still unclear whether the rest of the investigation has wrapped up, if results have been shared, and when a grand jury would convene. With scarce official communication, much new information has been coming from outside sources. That is not a criticism of law enforcement. That is the current reality of where this case sits. Official communication has been limited, and into that silence, TikTok, YouTube, and independent reporting have moved. Some of what they have found is speculation, some of it is pattern matching without foundation, but some of it, the timeline conflict around Freeman, the language discrepancy in the report, the 5-minute window before the sergeant was dispatched, that is reading a document carefully, that is not conspiracy. That is attention. The family of Nolan Wells commissioned an independent autopsy. They paid for it themselves. They wanted answers that were not filtered through the same system that was also being asked to investigate how their son died. That is not an accusation. That is a reasonable decision made by a family that felt, and still feels, that official channels were not moving fast enough or transparently enough to trust without verification. The result of that independent autopsy was this: cause and manner of death, undetermined pending investigation. Undetermined, not drowning, not accident, not natural causes. Undetermined, now. I want to be careful here, because undetermined in forensic pathology does not mean foul play. It means the evidence available at the time of examination was insufficient to assign a definitive cause or manner. It means the pathologist could not say, with the certainty the profession requires, what killed Nolan Wells or how. That is significant. But it is not the same as saying something criminal happened. What it does say is that this case does not close cleanly. There is no neat box to put it in. And for a family that has been asking hard questions from day one, that finding gives those questions more oxygen, not less. The official state autopsy is complete. But here is the problem. The results from the state medical examiner's office have not been made public. They are under seal. And they will now be sent to a grand jury. Think about what that means. The official government autopsy of an 18-year-old boy found on a Mississippi shoreline 2 days after the 4th of July is being withheld from the public and handed to a grand jury. That is not standard procedure for an uncomplicated drowning. That is the machinery of a serious legal process beginning to turn. Attorney Eric Hertz, who represents the Wells family, told NPR that he believes the case could go before a grand jury in just under 30 days from the time of that statement. Whether that timeline has held or whether it has shifted, we do not yet know. But the direction is clear. This case is moving toward formal legal scrutiny, and the autopsy is at the center of it. Now, here is the question I want you to sit with as we move into what the FBI's role actually looks like. Whether Nolan Wells died by accident is one question. Whether someone knew more than they told investigators and told them later or not at all is a completely different question. And right now, only one of those has been formally addressed. The other one is exactly what a grand jury is designed to investigate. Let's talk about the FBI. Because this is one of the areas where the TikTok content and the official record require the most careful separation. The transcript's creator, to their credit, explicitly notes that FBI involvement in the active investigation of Nolan's death remains unconfirmed as of the content's release. They flag it as a lead, not a conclusion. That discipline matters, and I want to honor it here. What the FBI has confirmed is this, and I am going to read their statement directly because the language is precise and the precision matters. FBI Jackson stated, quote, "From day one, we have been supporting Jackson County as they've worked to gather information. The FBI will remain ready to assist JCO investigators. At the federal level, the FBI has been working to address interstate threats that were received by individuals related to this matter." End quote. Read that carefully. There are two distinct tracks in that statement. Track 1. The FBI is supporting the Jackson County Sheriff's Office in gathering information. That is a supporting role. They are not leading the death investigation. They are assisting it. Track 2, and this is the part that does not get enough attention. The FBI is independently working at the federal level to address interstate threats. Threats received by individuals related to this case. That means people connected to Nolan Wells, whether friends, family, or others, have received threats. Those threats cross state lines. That makes them a federal matter, and the FBI is on it. Notice this. The existence of interstate threats in a case like this is not a footnote. It tells you that the pressure surrounding this investigation has escalated beyond angry comments on the internet. Someone, or multiple people, felt threatened enough that federal law enforcement got involved. And those threats came from outside Mississippi. That is a fact confirmed by the FBI's own public statement. What it means for the underlying investigation, whether it changes the trajectory of the grand jury review, that is unknown. But it is not nothing. Here is something else that is not nothing. Subpoenas have been issued for several social media companies, including Facebook and TikTok, and friends, family members, and local officials have been told not to delete any records because litigation is, quote, reasonably anticipated. That last phrase, reasonably anticipated, that is legal language. It is a formal declaration that someone, either the family or the state or both, expects this to end up in a courtroom. When lawyers use that phrase, they are not speculating, they are filing paperwork, they are creating a legal obligation for every party within reach to preserve everything they have. That obligation now sits over this case like a ceiling. Every text message, every DM, every location ping, every deleted story, every cached file on every device connected to anyone in that group. The law says preserve it, and the consequences for not doing so can be severe. Does that mean evidence was destroyed before those subpoenas landed? We do not know. What we do know is that Nolan's mother raised specific concerns about his phone, about the absence of Snapchat history and discrepancies in location data before those subpoenas were issued, which means she was already asking questions about the digital record before the legal system formally told anyone to protect it. That timing matters, and a grand jury will likely want to understand it. Now I want to bring in a frame that I think clarifies what we are actually looking at in this case. Because there are two different categories of question here, and conflating them is how cases like this get muddied in public discourse. The first category is, what happened to Nolan Wells on the night of July 4th and the early hours of July 5th? The second category is, what did the people around him do after? What did they say? What did they omit? What did they tell investigators? And when and how? These are not the same investigation. They may overlap. They may diverge, but they are separate questions. And right now, the second question is the one with the most publicly visible friction. The friends say Nolan chose to stay. That is on record. That is what they told deputies. Several of the friends who traveled with Wells told deputies that, I'll quote directly from the Marine Patrol Police report, when they left, he was in the company of an unknown female and that he chose to remain on the island. He chose to stay. That is the account. And to be fair, it is possible. People make that call. You go to an island, you meet someone, you decide to stay a little longer. It happens. But here is what the distress call adds to that account. On the same afternoon, the same boat in distress, one caller said, "It's not like we just left Nolan." Said it unprompted to a towing company dispatcher before anyone had officially reported Nolan missing. Does that language reflect guilt? We do not know. Does it reflect awareness that leaving Nolan behind was a decision that might later require explaining? That is a fair question. And a grand jury with access to all the records, all the communications, all the GPS data will be far better positioned to answer it than any of us watching from the outside. What the TikTok community has done, at its best, is hold that question open, refuse to let it be answered by the simplest available explanation, push on the seams of the official account until the record either holds or it doesn't. Some of that pushing has been reckless, some of it has veered into harassment. The family has had to navigate not just grief and a slow-moving investigation, but also the chaos of a million people with opinions and no accountability for being wrong. But some of that pushing, specifically the close reading of the MDMR report, the drone timeline, the language discrepancy, the 5-minute window, that is the kind of attention that has historically moved cases forward when official channels have stalled. And this case has not moved as fast as the Wells family believes it should have. That frustration is documented, it is on record, and it is part of why we are still here, months later, with a grand jury process underway and 2 autopsy results that do not agree. Let's talk about what the family actually wants. Because this is important, and it is too easy to flatten a family's position into a single demand for a single verdict. Christine Wells Wansley has been consistent. She wants a full accounting. She wants the digital records. She wants the official autopsy results made public. She wants the grand jury process to be thorough, not expedient. She is not asking the public to convict anyone. She is asking the system to treat her son's death with the seriousness it deserves, and she has put her own resources behind that ask. The independent autopsy, the subpoenas to 5 tech platforms, the retention of legal counsel experienced in cases that sit at the intersection of law enforcement, digital evidence, and public scrutiny. That is not a grieving mother making noise. That is a strategic legal campaign, and it says something important about where this family believes things stand. They do not trust that the official process, left alone, will produce what they are looking for. So they are building a parallel record, one that a grand jury, a civil court, or public opinion can examine alongside whatever the state produces. As of what we know today, the grand jury process is in motion. The official autopsy results remain sealed. The independent autopsy returned undetermined. The FBI is active on the threat investigation. Subpoenas are out. The digital preservation window is either open or has already closed, and no charges have been filed. That is the legal reality of where this case sits right now. Not a verdict, not a conclusion, a process in motion, with the most important pieces still out of public view. Attorney Eric Hertz has said the family's goal is not to dictate the outcome. It is to ensure the process is real, that the questions get asked by people with the power to compel answers, that the evidence is evaluated by people who have seen all of it, not just the portions that made the press release. And that, above everything else, is what a grand jury is for. The community surrounding this case has responded in kind. Vigils have been held. Fundraisers for the family's legal costs have circulated online. The Nolan Wells case has become, in parts of Mississippi and well beyond it, a referendum on how seriously a young man's death is taken when the circumstances are murky and the witnesses are still reachable and the answers are being withheld behind sealed documents. That community pressure is not irrelevant to the legal process. It does not determine outcomes, but it shapes the environment in which officials make decisions. And officials who know that a case is being watched closely, constantly, by people who are reading the documents as carefully as any journalist tend to move differently than officials who believe a case will fade quietly. Nolan's case has not faded. It has intensified. And the TikTok content we covered today is evidence of that intensification. Not because it changed the facts, but because it demonstrated that there are thousands of people willing to read a government report line by line and ask, does this add up? Right now, the honest answer to that question is not entirely. And that honesty is not an attack on law enforcement. It is an acknowledgement of what the record itself reveals when you read it carefully. Nolan Wells was 18 years old. He went to Horn Island to celebrate the 4th of July. He had a mother who tracked his phone because she loved him, and that is what mothers do. He had friends. He had a future. He was a person, not a case file, not a true crime subject, a person. His mother said something early in this investigation that has stayed with me. She said she just wants to know what happened to her son, not what the report says happened, not what the story that was handed to investigators says happened, what actually happened. That is not an extraordinary ask. That is the most ordinary ask a parent can make. And the fact that months later it has not been answered is the reason this case has not left the public conversation. The reason TikTok creators are reading drone logs and timing out windows between boat departures and sergeant dispatches. The reason you are still watching. The central question of this case, the one we laid out at the beginning, has not been answered. If Captain Freeman was physically occupied with a failing drone operation until at least 12:40 in the afternoon, how did he receive a specific name with specific language at 11:55? Who gave him that name, and why was the language different for her than for the two male names in the same report? Those questions are still open, and until they are answered, on the record, under oath, before a grand jury, they will stay open. We will keep following this case. Every document, every court date, every update from the family's legal team. Every time the official record shifts, we will be here to walk through it with you. If you are following this case and you want to be here when the grand jury news breaks, subscribe now so you do not miss it. And before you go, I want to ask you one question. Leave your answer below. Now that you have heard the Freeman drone timeline and the language discrepancy in the official report, what stands out to you most? Not a verdict, just what you noticed. Because in a case where the official answers are still sealed, noticing is everything.